let's talk about what it's like to navigate a really complex legal system when you're doing it all by yourself. We're going to follow the story of two people, Viktor and Maryna, as they go through two separate applications, two hearings, and what, from their perspective, felt like the exact same outcome every single time.
From their point of view, this whole journey ended with a score of 2-0. You see, they filed two different applications, really just hoping to get some clarity on their case. But both times, they were dismissed. And this repeating pattern is what's at the very heart of their story, this feeling of being shut down twice.
So you have to ask, how did it even get to this point? Well, in Viktor and Maryna's experience, it all started when one single procedural moment seemed to send their entire case down a path they absolutely did not see coming. At first, everything seemed pretty straightforward. Viktor and Maryna believed they were on a clear track. Their application had been marked by a judge as one that requires a hearing. Now, for them, this was like a green light. It signaled a direct route to a full, open hearing where they could finally argue the substance of their case.
But then came the turning point. In their understanding, a session on September 15th with someone called a Judicial Case Manager, or JCM, changed everything. The clear path they thought they were on was suddenly and completely rerouted. They weren't heading for a full trial anymore. They were heading for a much shorter hearing in October.
Now, for Viktor and Maryna, the role of this JCM was a total surprise. They had assumed this person was kind of like a court administrator, a technical coordinator. But the court later clarified that no, a JCM is actually a judicial officer who has real authority and discretion. And that's a huge distinction. And for someone without a law degree, that's a really tough thing to wrap your head around in the moment. So as you can imagine, they were pretty confused by this sudden change of direction. And that confusion sent them on a search for answers, trying to track down the actual documents that could explain why this decision was made. And they weren't just fishing around in the dark. Their search was laser-focused on a specific phrase they'd heard: different directions. They just wanted to know what exactly were these directions, who gave them, and how on earth did they have the power to completely reroute their case.
What they were really after were these internal instructions, sometimes called morning notes. They figured these documents might hold the key, shed some light on why the plan for their case management session was changed, and what exactly the JCM was basing their actions on.
So they did the proper thing. They put in formal requests to the court registry to get these documents. But their search came up empty. They weren't provided with those internal files. And from their standpoint, the path forward was just as murky as it was before they started. They were right back at square one.
Okay, so this whole quest for clarity, it actually pushed them right into the formal hearing process. And it was here that they really began to feel the true weight of it all, especially when you compared their situation to the big institutional parties they were up against.
Their first shot, their first formal application, was all about the JCM's decisions and that rerouting of their case. They laid out their arguments, made their case, and the outcome was simple and direct. Application dismissed. From where they stood, all their questions about the process were still just hanging in the air, completely unanswered.
But the story doesn't stop there. After that first dismissal, another procedural issue popped up. A defendant, the IFRC, didn't even show up to a hearing. So Viktor and Maryna filed a second application. They hoped this would be a simple administrative thing. A quick clarification from the registry. Easy, right?
Well, instead of a simple answer, what they got was a serious case of déjà vu. The court scheduled yet another formal hearing to deal with it, and after they went through that whole process all over again, the outcome was exactly the same. Their second application was also dismissed.
And this repeating experience, it really drove home what they started to see as a huge imbalance in the system, a kind of procedural asymmetry. The whole cycle of hearings felt profoundly different for them as just regular individuals than it seemed to for the large organizations they were facing.
I mean, think about it this way. For Viktor and Maryna, every single hearing meant real, out-of-pocket costs. We're talking travel expenses, paying for a certified interpreter, taking unpaid time off of work. It's a huge personal and financial burden. But for an institutional party, attending a hearing is just part of a paid workday. It's an official duty with absolutely no comparable personal cost. So after going through all of this, what's the big takeaway here? Well, it really all boils down to a question about just how clear the legal process actually is when you're trying to navigate it on your own.
The crucial point comes back to this. After 2 applications and 2 hearings,
Viktor and Maryna were left with 2 dismissals. And in their minds, that created this subjective feeling of a 2-0 score. It felt like a clear loss in their fight for what they saw as simple procedural clarity.
Now look, their story isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's a really powerful illustration of just how confusing and complex a legal process can feel from the inside, especially when you don't have a team of lawyers. It just goes to show that the key decisions that shape the entire route of a case aren't always visible or even understandable to the very people they affect the most.
And that's what leaves us with this lingering question. It's less about a final answer and more about the experience that anyone representing themselves might face. When you step into the system by yourself, just how clear is the path for those who have to walk it alone?